My name is Ashley Mattson, as Tegan mentioned, and I would like to start off with saying that this is a two-parter. So we're going to present to you about the nursery, but y'all are going to come out for a field trip to the nursery and see our fields in bloom and our facility, if you would like. We will be in the summer agenda. So you're going to learn about the nursery today, and then you're going to come back or meet us out there in the summer and see it firsthand. So this is a quick run through of our talk today. We'll go over the nursery in general and then focus on the native seed program, and then we'll conclude it with how you can be involved with the work we do. So the nursery is about 98 years old, and it has gone forward with this mission of producing genetically rich plant material. And by genetically rich, we mean using or propagating plants from wild populations. Our tree seedlings, our shrubs, they are all produced from wild collected plant material. If we can't source wild collected plant material, then we will, or source it ourselves, we'll go to a supplier such as like Sheffield's, and they can provide us with the source information. So if for some reason we don't have Missoula aspen because our seed harvest was a bust, we can go to Sheffield's and ideally order seed that was from Montana, but if it's not from Montana, we'll be able to tell folks where the seed came from, if it came from Utah or Minnesota. So we are collecting seed ourselves and then also purchasing seed that has wild plant genetics. And then our plant material is sold in bulk strictly for conservation projects. And conservation covers a wide variety, whether folks are planting trees in their yard for birds, or folks are establishing windbreaks to shelter their crops, or doing stream bank restoration, post-fire restoration. Conservation covers so many different topics. And I personally think even if you're planting one tree, you are doing conservation, because that one tree is going to have a profound impact on the space around it and the inhabitants of that space as well. And then we don't receive a yearly budget from the state. We operate solely on the sale of our seedlings and now our seed. And then we also apply for grants. So we can apply for grants with the state. We can apply for grants with federal organizations, private organizations, but we do not, the state doesn't send us money every year. We have to find our own. We're 80-acre facility with 60 field acres. Our property line is outlined in gold, and we have 5 greenhouses producing approximately 1 million seedlings. And we are currently in the planning process for 6 greenhouses. And greenhouses are very expensive. It's about $250,000 to build a functioning greenhouse with irrigation, temperature controlled, state-of-the-art facility, if you would say. And we're very lucky that we can get federal funds for these greenhouses. We don't really turn a profit necessarily. We are basically running as a nonprofit without the status. And so we were able to acquire federal funds for these 2 greenhouses, and without their assistance, we would not be able to build more greenhouses. We operate on 7 permanent staff members, and we have anywhere from 0 to 8 seasonals with us. Michael Butts is our nursery manager. He oversees the entire operation. And then by operation, I mean our seedling side and our seed side. And then Benjamin Jones, he works on the seedling side of production. Kylie and I work on the seed side, but my position also overlaps with the seedling operation because I organize and sell and deliver all of our seedlings with the help of our staff. And then in 2022 is when we formed the Native Seed Network. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to point out that you can see our seed increase fields in this photo. They're the black lines of weed fabric. That's where we are established. So you can see like there's a triangular shape there. That's our first field. Adjacent is the second, and then on a diagonal is the third. And Google satellites haven't updated in a while. Field 2 has more rows of weed fabric in it than that. So every year we have an annual sale. That's how we disperse our seed and seedlings. Orders are placed online for spring delivery. So you're kind of learning all of this information now for next year. Our sale starts in January, and then starting in April, actually next week is when seedlings start to go out the door for pickup here in Missoula. We also deliver to 37 counties across Montana for free with our refrigerated semi truck. So today the truck went to Sweetgrass County, Carbon County, and a couple other ones, delivering folks' seedlings. And then you can see here in this photo, these are the largest size seedlings we sell. They come in trays of 9. So that bulk, you have to buy 9 of one seed source. So we might have 5 different kinds of aspen in this size, but they're from different seed sources in different elevations. So you can match the seed source to your property location. If you're looking for certain qualities that, say a higher elevation plant has or a lower elevation plant has. And there's a really high demand for our seedlings. We are currently sold out. We kind of just sell until there's nothing left. But we might have leftovers in May, so you can come stop by the nursery or give us a call and see if there's canceled orders or mismatched stuff from filling in if a tray isn't like complete, making sure that all the plants are good in there. And last year we had 865 orders total. This year, on the first day of our sale, once I took the password off the store, there was 300 people in there immediately. And then for the day, we placed about 800 orders. So almost last year's entirety in the first day of this year's sale. And we're at about 1,200 orders total for the year. And then besides our annual sale, we also do contracts. So restoration projects, agencies, even private landowners, tribes will come to us looking for a high quantity of seedlings. It starts at 1,000 for the first species, and then every species after that can be 500. And I won't get into too many details about this, but we also can set up contracts for seed. We primarily do that with national forests and national parks, but it is open to anyone. And then this is some photos of our seedlings. As I mentioned, they're primarily used for windbreaks and erosion control, wildlife habitat. So I had mentioned earlier that our seedlings are sourced from either seed we collect or seed we have to purchase from a supplier that is source identified. Our seed is always going to be from wild collected Montana populations. We'll never outsource for our seed program. All of the plants that are in production, all of the seed that we have in our bank, either we went out or seed collectors that we contracted with went out and banked those species. We'll never purchase it from a supplier. We'll only get it from collectors. And then our seedling sizes vary from 10 cubic inches, which is about 1 foot tall for a conifer, maybe 2 feet tall for a deciduous tree. And then they go so that's the smallest on the left. And then on the right, those are the largest size seedlings. And they can be as tall as like 6 feet. And then these are just some visuals. I think you're all very familiar with this type of work. But this is what our plant material looks like on the landscape. And then, so this year was the first year that we had seed for sale. It was either wild collected seed or farmed seed that we grew at our facility, which Kylie will go into in more detail later. But we were able to sell 6 species total, 3 from wild collected populations and 3 from our foundation fields. And we'll actually have a 4th species from our foundation field this fall. We expect to have seed available year-round, depending on supply. So we'll stock seed in the fall. Folks can order and pick up at the nursery, or we can mail it to you. And then ideally, we'll have stock through the spring. And we hope to have seed mixes in the fall. I don't know if that's going to happen. But the Native Seed Network's mission is aligned with the National Seed Strategy. We're working to bring together public and private conservation practitioners who are dedicated to using native ecotype seed for their projects and properties. And we want to use strategic partnerships to amplify the native plant material in Montana. These are our partners, and a partner to us is anybody who assists us in any way. So some of these folks have made monetary donations to our efforts, but we also have folks who are volunteering their time with us or collecting seed and sending it to us, or growing plants for our foundation fields. And then our principal partner is the Missoula Conservation District. They've been working with us to make sure this project is up and running. They organize our volunteer groups, and we'll have information about that towards the end. But Sonia and Brian, they will have, I can give you their contact information if you want to come out and do some weeding or planting with us. And then our goals, we want to have a diverse wild population seed bank from a variety of species. We want to increase the availability of ecotype seed that is derived from wild populations. Our seed that we grow is known as foundation seed or a pre-varietal release. And then we want to complement the NRCS. We do produce seedlings from NRCS Bridger Plant Material Center seed sources. So we do have those, and we want to be able to marry our products and theirs together so there's a well-rounded choice of plant material for landowners and conservation practitioners. We would love to produce liner material for other nurseries one day, specifically native plants with our wild collected and ecotype seed. I would say the next step is for us to partner with a commercial grower. We're looking for someone who has hundreds of acres that they can amplify this seed on. So we're taking 3 distinct populations or more, outcrossing them in our fields, and then passing off that seed to a commercial grower to not only help boost the agricultural market in Montana, but also to increase the availability of seed that either the commercial seed grower can sell themselves or we can buy back a % of it and sell. That is kind of still in the works, but we won't be gatekeeping our seed varieties at all. Anyone who wants access to this seed has it, as long as the seed's available. We sell out fast. So phase 2, we're continuing to prep fields for production. We also have a pollinator meadow, a space that's dedicated in our first foundation field. And then we'll keep expanding our staff. We'll keep suppressing weeds. Feels like that's all we do sometimes. And then these are the fields that I mentioned earlier that are under production right now. Just a little zoom in on our ecoregion. So the seed that we're currently producing and have for sale is for 15 through 17 is our ecoregions. And we're hoping to expand outside of our ecoregion so we can include Eastern Montana. But because we're Western based, it's a lot easier for us to go out and around Missoula to collect seed. But we're going to be making multiple trips this year out east so we can start banking populations and get them on the SO list for 2026 installation. Just a little bit more detail about our production. So we are very small scale in regards to seed production, and we need a partner that can help us take this to a larger scale, other growers to work with us. And then this is just kind of a cycle of the seed production. This is our first field that we put into installation, and that's Symphotrichum lathe right there. But we'll be producing this foundation seed, we'll be sending it to commercial growers, and then restoration practitioners and landowners will have access to this seed for their projects. And then this is just some photos of the nursery cycles, anywhere from collecting seed from our own windbreaks. This is field 1, asleep for the winter. There's some crew members packaging seed or seedlings. In the fall, we start packaging, and basically they go from November until probably early February, packaging seedlings depending on the year, and then they go out the door in the spring. And with that, Kylie's going to take over.
Yeah, so I think the best way to kind of go about explaining what we do at the nursery is go through our yearly cycle with the native seed program, which Ashley touched on already a little bit. So everything that we wild collect in the summer and fall gets stored and dried until we're ready to chip away at cleaning it in the late fall and the winter. And then each collection goes through a series of cleaning mechanisms depending on the species and the size of the collection, which I'll touch more on later. And then our cleaning season usually lasts from about October until January, followed by our sowing and propagation season in February and March. Yeah, so starting off with wildland seed collection, as Ashley mentioned earlier, we collect a little seed from many individuals. We try to keep our collection at random and revisit populations throughout the season to collect at different stages. And our ultimate goal is to collect like 3 to 6 populations from our ecoregion. And each population will go into producing 1,000 plugs that then get planted in our seed increase fields. So yeah, our main goal is to aim for 3 diverse populations so that they can cross-pollinate and kind of create like this super mix that anybody from 3,000 feet to 6,000 feet can plant or seed on their property. And then we're also mapping all the data that we collect when we go out there. And then this is our 2025 priority species list for east of the divide. These are just kind of species that are on our radar for this summer. If any of you have populations that you know about and are willing to share with us, we would be more than grateful because it just helps us kind of cater to all of Montana, especially with getting eastern Montana species into our production fields. And then this is a priority list for west of the divide. And then our propagation in spring of 2024, it was the year we really hit the ground running. We propagated a total of 13 species for the network, which I've listed up there. And with the help of some of our nursery partners, Coeur d'Alene Forest Service Nursery and Great Bear Native Plants, due to the newness of our program and therefore lack of space and resources, we just really wanted to work with some of our local partners to help maximize our first year's production. And then we also propagated a total of 6 species for those contract grow outs that Ashley kind of touched on earlier. One with Helena, Lewis, and Clark National Forest, and then another with Yellowstone National Park. And those species are also listed up there. And then I just kind of wanted to show what our sowing kind of looks like. We sow in different size styrofoam blocks. We normally sow in like an S5 block for our Forbes species. So one block, we can sow, I believe it's a total of 160 plants per block. So it really helps maximize our space. And then some of these other pictures are just things popping up in the greenhouse, which I always love seeing this time of year. Showy milkweed, fringe sage, arrowleaf balsam root, and some silky lupin. And then propagation this year, 2025, and with the help of Great Bear Native Plants, they'll be propagating 3 of these species for us. And I think we're actually getting ready to pick those up in a couple weeks and get those planted in our seed fields. And then we'll also be propagating 3 grasses this year for the Montana Native Seed Network to diversify our future seed mixes. And then we plan to put twice as many grasses into production for 2026. And then we'll also be doing more species for Yellowstone National Park's contract. And then you may have noticed Idaho fescue is being grown for both the network and Yellowstone National Park. Our facility is about 60 acres. So we plan to really utilize that space in those fields so that we can create some isolation distances, even though those wild collected populations, those 3 species I mentioned, or populations I mentioned earlier, we want them to crossbreed, but for specific projects like this, we want to make sure we're keeping Yellowstone National Park's fescue away from ours so that we're not getting our genetics mixed in with their populations. And then potential ecotype species for 2026 installation. Yeah, hopefully we can find all these species and make it happen. Field cultivation and prep. As our plants are hard working, growing in the greenhouse, our crew is hard at work in the fields. Field prep kind of, it's a lot of laying out and burying weed fabric and mowing. We burn holes in the weed fabric about 1 foot apart And then when we're all set and ready to plant, we use garden augers or a tulip drill to drill the holes for those plugs. Some challenges is that most of our field work is done by hand, so it can be very time consuming. We're a very small staff. Predation, we're in the process of fencing off all of our seed fields, but we did find last summer we had a resident fox that was able to crawl under the fence and started digging up a couple of our primrose tubers. But that's just the nature of farming. But our biggest challenge is that many of the fields that we're now putting into production have been untouched for about 2 to 7 years. So it means there's a lot of weeds, and bindweed is our biggest issue, which I've pictured down there on the bottom right. And yeah, that weed fabric had been laid down for an entire year, and we burned those holes and it was just green, thriving. So that's just kind of something that we have to keep in mind when we're planting, or like where we're planting in some of our fields. And then, so our team may be small, but our volunteers are mighty. They helped us plant over 30,000 plugs in 2024. So that's the 3,000 plugs per species. We had a total of help from 31 volunteers, which came out to 110 volunteer hours. We really wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we did without the help of our principal partner at the Missoula Conservation District and the volunteer events they helped organize for us. And we hope that all of you can get out there again if you came last year, or like you have another chance this summer. And then also the Missoula Department of Ecology and Extension for organizing a day for the Youth Corps to come out and help us plant. On that bottom left photo, you can see it was very wet and rainy, and these poor kids, they had like, their spirits were so high and they were so stoked to be out there. And I was just really excited to have the opportunity to teach the younger generation about the conservation work that we do. And then these are just some progression images of our seed fields. Last year in May, when things just started getting planted, and then July, things start blooming, and September, things really took off. And then harvesting. So mostly just hand harvesting at the moment. We do have hopes to secure funds to purchase a small plot combine. We have now 1 acre into production, and then our 4th acre field is getting full, and then we have a whole 10-acre field to move into. So that's a lot of time with a lot of hand clippers. So hopefully we can score those funds. And then we dry down all of our material on large tarps and repurposed dirt bags. So we get these huge shipments of dirt. And when those are all empty, you could see in that top right photo, once everything's dried out on tarps, we kind of move them into there just to maximize space, because we don't have a true seed extractory at the moment. So there's a lot of shifting things around. And that chart kind of just shows the bulk weight that we harvested this first year, which was absolutely incredible. And then seed cleaning. Our current methods are using a screening table shown in the bottom left. All the material that we had dried down gets put on this large screen and kind of like shook around until all the seed falls down. We've attached another large bag underneath there, and the crew's there working on the Symphotrichum lathe. And then up on the top photo, we're using a brush machine to clean wild collected fireweed. And the video demonstrates cleaning a much smaller wild collected population that is of Heterotheca villosa. Just using like a rubber ribbed mat with some gloves, and then we put it through this office clipper, which has customized screens to fit various seed sizes, and you can adjust the air column in there, and it kind of just like chaff moves out, either like floats up into the top or goes down to the side, and then all the good seed falls to the bottom like that. And then seed testing and packaging, we're currently partnering with Montana State Seed Lab. So all of the seed that we harvest from our seed fields gets sent there for a purity analysis and viability analysis, giving us our pure live seed percentage. So purity is just like, is there weed seed? Do we have any extra like crop seed that shouldn't be in there? Viability, doing germ tests, that sort of thing. And this is a good demonstration of, or example of how our PLS, pure life seed weight, does not always equal our bulk harvested weight. And so that chart there kind of just shows that, for example, 41 pounds bulk weight of Symphotrichum lave is really only equal to, in this case, it was about 28 pounds of pure life, good viable seed. Seed banking and herbarium. So we're in the process of creating or building up our plant and seed herbarium as a shared resource for people in our network. And then, so we've been in the process of physically and digitally archiving our species that we've collected, just as a resource in terms of seed and plant ID. And then we also want this to be a shared resource for others in their conservation efforts. And then also building up our seed bank for future conservation projects. So if, you know, there's one population that we collected from last year, and like Miller Peak is a great example. And if there was, that population was completely decimated, we have a collection that we can then share for that project to hopefully bring that population back.